right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Leah Madry, and I am visiting from the Dairy Barn Arts Center in Athens, Ohio this evening. We are your host. The Dairy Barn is a nonprofit arts center with a plethora of classes and workshops and exhibitions throughout the year. And I would like to start out by introducing you all to your hostess this evening. Ohio Poet Laureate Carrie Gunter Seymour is the author of 3 collections of poetry and is the winner of a POTY Award, Story Trade Award, Legacy Award, and Best Book Award. She is a Pillars of Prosperity Fellow for the Foundation for Appalachian Ohio, the executive director of the Women of Appalachia Project, and is the editor of its anthology series, Women Speak. Her work has been featured in the American Book Review, World Literature Today, the New York Times, and Poem a Day. Find her at www.carriegunterseymourpoet.com. Welcome, Carrie.
Hi, Leah. Hey, thanks so much. Thank you so very much. And thank all of you who are joining us here live tonight and all who will watch later when we post the recording, which will be available for replay on the Dairy Barns YouTube page. And I'll also post it on my Facebook and Blue Sky and Threads social media pages. And on my personal website, which is carriegunterseymourpoet.com. Just want to make sure all of you there at home have your microphones turned off so that we can hear everybody speak real clearly tonight. Thank you for that. Also ask that your cameras are off. I want to thank all the fine folks at the Dairy Barn Arts Center for hosting us this evening, and to the Ohio Arts Council for sponsoring the 2024 season of Spoken and Heard events. This evening marks the last event for the 2024 season. Tonight, I am featuring 2 exceptional award-winning poets, Ellen Bass and Dustin Brookshire. For those here with us tonight, we'll take a question or 2 after the readings, so think about it, jot down your thoughts, and be prepared to post them in the chat after the readings. Okay, let's get started. Dustin Brookshire, he, him, is a recipient of the 2024 John Tribble Editors Fellowship Award from Poetry at the Sea, and is the author of 3 chapbooks, most recently Never Picked First for Playtime from Harbor Editions. He's the co-editor of Let Me Say This, a Dolly Parton poetry anthology from Madville Publishing, which was named to the 2024 Books All Georgians Should Read, a list made by the Georgia Center for the Book. Dustin is the founder of the Wild and Precious Life series, as well as Limp Wrist Journal and Why I Write series. He also volunteers as Punch Bucket Lit's director of virtual programs. You can visit him at dustinbrookshire.com. You can pick up a copy of Never Picked First for Playtime at smallharborpublishing.com. And Dustin and I met by fate at a library in Toledo, Ohio. So what does that say about our libraries, how important they are? He was there to hear a friend read from my anthology, I Thought I Heard a Cardinal Sing, Ohio's Appalachian Voices. And as all great stories unfold, from that day forward, Dustin's and my life have intertwined in ways we could not have imagined on that sunny Saturday at the library. He's hardworking, an activist, and a wonderful human being. Welcome, Dustin.
Thank you so much. Thank you to Dairy Barn Arts Center and to the Ohio Arts Council for their support of Spoken and Heard. Leah, thank you for being here tonight and being our tech extraordinaire. Whether it's with Zoom reactions or using your hand, let's give Carrie a round of applause because she curates this series and she does so much for writers in Ohio and beyond. And Carrie, I'm lucky to be in your orbit. So let's see those reactions go off, people. on Zoom. I'm still pinching myself that I'm reading with Ellen Bass. So thank you to everyone for bearing with me as I say something to Ellen. Ellen, I've admired your work for years. You were once quoted as saying, "I discovered that the very act of creating a poem gives you a kind of agency over your problems that you don't typically have." The author in this 2016 article continued by noting that writing allowed you to hold your experiences and decide what you were going to shape out of them. I've held that quote and your words close. I'm grateful for you, your words, and your poetry, and it's an honor to read with you tonight. I'm going to give a general content warning because most of my work explores body dysmorphia, sexual assault, homophobia. So I'm just going to do that at the beginning. It's going to pop up throughout the reading. Not going to be offended. You need to take time for yourself. You must do what protects you. Let's start out with a little Dolly Parton. On a flight to Sacramento, Dolly Parton speaks to me. Her voice echoes from a TV appearance, or maybe an interview I read. We all need to love a little more. Dolly, I'm trying to love more. After all, love comes in many forms. I pass a woman in first class, tell her I love the silver sparkle around the base of your shoes. She smiles. I tell the man across the aisle that I like the vibrant colors of his scarf, even though I don't know why he's wearing it. He shifts the scarf proudly, says, "My wife made it." I tell the lady sitting beside me that the strap of her purse is pretty, the gold print swirling and unfolding, how I imagine our souls do. I survived a self-absorbed mother whose love hurt as much as it comforted. Marilyn once told me, poets always blame their mothers and their poems. All those years ago, I didn't falter. Yes, but some mothers earn the blame. She nodded. Oh, mother, yes, this is yet another poem with you sneaking behind its lines, trying to reside in its heart. I forgive you. I do. But that doesn't mean I'll stop writing about you, writing about us. If Dolly Parton had been my mother, she'd laugh when catching me trying on her wigs, tiptoeing around her room, her high heels too small. She'd have a custom pair made for my birthday, and we'd have high-heel dance parties while watching the Grand Ole Opry. She'd encourage me to write, gift me Aunt Willadine's book of poems. She'd remind me, songs are poetry set to music. She'd keep the poem I wrote in middle school, take me along whenever she traveled. I'd beg for our summer tradition, sneaking off in our RV, destination selected by me, and always starting with a drive-through stop at Taco Bell for a Mexican pizza. And when I came out to her, she'd say, "Oh, honey, I've always known." Hold my face in her hands, saying, "I'll always love you." She never would have even thought the words my mother said to me. "Great. Now I'll be stuck taking care of you when you die from AIDS." Little trivia, if you love Dolly Parton, you know she loves Taco Bell and a Mexican pizza. And her sister Willadine really did write a book of poetry, and Dolly had her on her TV show. You can thank me if you win that question at trivia. I love some villanelles, so I hope you like a villanelle because you're about to sit through a few of them. Blasphemous villanelle. You're on a slippery slope to blasphemy. My parents warned over our spaghetti dinner. You should seek guidance on bended knee. My mother advised before sipping sweet tea. A child arguing with parents is rarely a winner. I've been on a slippery slope to blasphemy since learning to question. Dustin, do you see Pangea in the Bible? I wasn't going to bicker. No voice would speak to me on bended knee, explaining that science is wrong. You disagree to be different. I rolled my eyes at dinner, which clocks for one contemplating blasphemy. I almost turned the conversation to astronomy, the Big Bang, an excellent conversation beginner for a boy looking to the stars on bended knee. Religion doesn't trump science, the audacity. Adult me loves the recipe for being a sinner. I revel in the slippery slope that is blasphemy. It isn't guidance I seek when on bended knee. If you're not familiar with Grindr, Google it. It's an app that a lot of gay people use. Quality Men, a Grindr villanelle, inspired by Randall Mann. And the things that I should say that you'll hear in here are a lot of things that have been seen in profiles or comments that I have witnessed from friends or have seen. Needed to clarify that. I'm only interested in quality men, not into younger guys, all brats. Don't message me again and again. No response is a response. When will people learn? No femmes, no fats. I'm only interested in quality men. Over 55? Better be a 10. There's no bell curve. That's that. Don't message me again. This ass is a prize you can win. Be successful, a man of many hats. I'm only interested in quality men. Own, don't rent. I love a penthouse with a balcony for our chats. Don't message me again and again. No BO, I don't want a pig pen. And don't forget to send your stats. I'm only interested in quality men. Don't message me again and again. The Nancy and Ronnie Show, and this has an epigraph. I spoke with Mrs. Reagan about the attached telegram. She did not feel this was something the White House should get into. Mark Weinberg, a Reagan staffer. In 1986, Nancy Reagan said, "Just say no," next to her husband on national television, a glimpse into the Nancy and Ronnie Show. Her slogan's origin, if you didn't know, Nancy said it with motherly precision to a little girl in Oakland. Just say no. A spark. The movement began to grow. Thousands of chapters by 88. No division with the writers on the Nancy and Ronnie Show. Mandatory minimum sentences, a blow to further their racist vision. Nancy reminds, you better just say no. Ronnie was purposely slow, addressing the AIDS crisis, obsession with the producers on the Nancy and Ronnie Show. Dying, Rock Hudson wrote to Nancy for help. Though they'd known each other for years, her decision? She told her people, just say no. AIDS won't air on the Nancy and Ronnie Show. This next poem is what I call a contoured villanelle. So a contoured villanelle takes the N words from each line of an existing villanelle, matching N words in the same order to construct a new villanelle. And this is a collaboration I wrote with the poet Denise Duhamel, who I love and adore, and she's a friend of mine. And this contoured villanelle uses Mad Girl's Love Song by Sylvia Plath for its N words. And if you know Michael Myers, the Halloween series, you'll get some things in this one. Scream Queen Villanelle. When I was a kid, I loved to play dead. After watching Halloween again and again, at my desk, I feigned sleep, a knucklehead, dreaming of being a scream queen. My red blood splashed across the screen at the drive-in. When I was a kid, I loved to play dead, pulling my covers tight, trapped in my bed, so sure I'd be strangled by someone wild. At my desk, I feigned sleep, a knucklehead, refusing to be forgotten, not willing to fade, to live on in film with other killer women. When I was a kid, I loved to play dead, escaping the boogeyman, as Lori said. Before she survived by changing her name, at my desk, I feigned sleep, a knucklehead. Envying Lori, she didn't run. Instead, off with his head, never to fear Michael again. When I was a kid, I loved to play dead. At my desk, I feigned sleep, a knucklehead. Speaking of Denise, she did a lecture that I heard about prose poems. I had never written prose poems before, and this just started my love of writing prose poems a couple years ago. So the last set of poems I'm going to read are all prose poems. Learning to punch at lunch with Army veteran Brig at residency. For Brig. Brig tells us about the summer day his daughter came home from school, sharing that an 8-year-old grabbed her 5-year-old tush. Immediately, he taught her how to pull fingers into a palm, rest the tucked thumb against the pointer finger to form a fist. Never tuck the thumb under your fingers, he explains. You'll break it. Strike forward with a sturdy, straight arm. Send your fist directly into the solar plexus. He practiced with his daughter over and over and over until her punch was instinct. He practiced with us at the table, Brig monitoring our form. Earlier this year, on my 40th birthday, a man grabbed my ass with the force one grabs a cliff to survive. His friends excused him with echoes of, "He's drunk, he's drunk." One friend said, "Smile." It was a compliment. That night would have been so different if I had met Brig sooner. I'm going to read some poems that have poem and witch. These are inspired by Denise. Denise has this series of poems that all begin poem and witch. Some of them may be going into fiction. Some of them may be factual when they're hers. I've really enjoyed exploring this, and so you're going to hear a few of those. Poem in which I never had low self-esteem. I'm pleased with my weight, like a spelling bee champ, proud of his win throughout elementary school. In middle school, I celebrate my love handles like Americans celebrate the 4th of July. My father never reminds me before eating dessert that he's never seen a fat person happy. My mother insists I eat a second and third helping of dinner instead of asking, "Do you want a miserable life?" I never spend the summer after high school doing cardio 3 times a day or living on a diet of Slim Fast, green apples, and a drug recalled because of a Dateline special. I still date A. His grin and pearly whites a siren song moving my ship gaily forward. I never respond with a smile or blowing a kiss each time he says, "You belong to me." And when A shows up that night, like Laurie Strode in the Halloween reboot, I'm ready. Property. You belong to me. You said it to your boyfriend after dating for 2 months. You said it with a smile. You always said it with a smile. Sometimes the smile lasted for 30 seconds. Sometimes the smile lasted a minute. Sometimes you said it with your hand on your boyfriend's right shoulder with a slight grip, but still, you smiled. You belong to me. You said it to your boyfriend the day you parked for hours outside his apartment building. You said it to him after his friend left. You yelled at him, "Who the hell was that? Why was another guy at your goddamn apartment?" You even said it after you apologized for yelling. You didn't apologize for stalking. After the apology, you explained to him love was your why. You love your boyfriend so much, your internal wiring malfunctions. You belong to me. You didn't say it after the breakup, when you visited your now ex-boyfriend, who for some illogical reason wanted the two of you to be friends, who thought you were only coming over to borrow his vacuum cleaner. You didn't say it after you raped him, but you did smile. You smiled as you stroked his cheek, then you walked out the door. Poem in which I was never raped. I'm an unusually happy person, the kind that makes people say it has to be an act, or give me whatever he is taking. I spend nights on a sugar bender, drinking lemonade made from my grandmother's recipe. I create TikTok videos of DIY crafting projects. I learn how to play tennis, but ditch it for pickleball. My knees thank me, but totally happy, still unusually happy. I embrace gay culture of loving showgirls. I quote Nomi's epic faux pas, "It's Versace." I joke of tossing marbles in the path of anyone in my way. I will still use money for therapy, all those pesky mommy issues alive and well. The only nightmares I have come from my obsession with horror movies. I still post my quarterly PSA on Facebook and Twitter. When are rape jokes funny? Never. It doesn't hurt when I look at my friend, the one that never had the occasion to ask, yeah, but are you sure you said no? So lighten the mood a little. Hope this one makes you laugh. You know how I said some of these poems in which are true in fiction? I hate that this one's fiction. Poem in which I proudly have a big ol' ass. My ass is so bountiful, forget bouncing a quarter off it. Bounce your firstborn baby. My 5-inch inseam shorts are specially made to hold my scrumptious Georgia peach. My TikTok handle is that big old gay ass. My hits are in the millions because I twerk and I twerk and I twerk. Did I tell you I twerk every chance I get? I also dance every time Sir Mix-a-Lot's Baby Got Back is played. I tell anyone who will listen that I inspired that damn song. Oh my God, Becky, look at his butt. It's so big. He looks like one of those rap guys' boyfriends. They only talk to him because he looks like a total prostitute. Homophobia stole my spotlight, and when I gave poetry readings, I request the podium be removed. I always recite this poem standing sideways, leaning into the mic, so you can take in this big old beautiful ass and all its glory before I walk off stage, letting your eyes feast. I read this in an in-person reading, and a lady stopped me after and she said, well, I'm just a little confused because you don't have a big ass. And I was like, ma'am, you are definitely right. I don't. And that's the humor in it. And now I have a story to tell. Thank you for being here. I'm going to close with a collaboration that I wrote with Diamond Ford. She lives in Asheville. She's a fantastic poet. And I asked her if I could close with a poem that we wrote together. It's called Recipe for Loving Yourself. Preheat your inner saboteur to 425 degrees. Use pride for kindling. Each matchstick can't or should, cindered and curling like ribbons beneath the heat. Gather all the voices from your youth, the bullies, the older siblings, the teachers, your father who taught you early that wishing would never be enough, your mother who recruited you as her sous chef to her narcissism, showed you how to chop her critics like onions, to peer between the pearlescent pearls, each layer leading you closer to the core of her. Wash away that grime, that grit, that great aura greening into lush leaves. Be mindful of your tenderness, your buds soothing open in water. Take a 5-minute break. Walk outside, find clouds. Say aloud what you see, a flower, a dragon, a hermit crab scuttling over sand. If there are no clouds, lay on the ground, arms by your side, palms touching the damp grass. Let the cool earth swaddle you. Return. Breathe. Remove self-doubt from the deep freeze, shake the blistering cold, then grate it into the bowl like potatoes, parsnips, another root with a drive to survive. Find what delights you. Search the cabinets, the pantry, the spice rack tucked beside the fridge. Look for Joy's great garden. Coriander, cardamom, paprika, blooming poppies along the tongue. Use a step stool if you have to. Embrace the last-minute store run. Be the dish you want to be, or have been. Southern child with a Shira shirt stained with blackberries before the world oversaturated your self-view. Back when you pranced proudly, sashayed through the living room with a proofed belly blooming like a baker prepping the perfect bread. Permit the uncomfortable cling. Do not use the nonstick pan, no olive oil or Pam. Do not second guess this step. History stays crusted to the bottom. Use it like your grandmother's cast iron skillet, time-worn and glistening, but let go of the hurt your mother swirled into sangria like spoiled fruit when she'd pour you a glass, the rot funneling beneath your chin, saying sip. Then watch. Even the oven light, merciful guardian, stays vigilant over this making. And this is not a quiet activity. This is not a souffle. You will stomp, romp, dance in the kitchen while you wait. Sing as loud as you have to Dolly, Tina, Chapel Roan. And when song is not an option, scream. Bake, but be prepared to bake for days. Note that a longer bake is not a reflection of your commitment to yourself. If done right, one bake is rarely enough. Learn to be comfortable with the uncomfortable heat. Turn down the AC. Fly the windows open. Flip the fan switch spinning on high. If you don't feel the heat, recheck each step. Savor the slow burn. This is what healing requires. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you to all my friends I see in the audience, and Ellen, cannot wait to hear you read.
Oh my goodness, Dustin. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for your deeply honest work. It educates us as well as entertaining us. I was torn between laughing and having tears during your reading. I'm sure everybody else was too. Loved the villanelles and the contoured villanelles, I believe you called them. That was new to me. You're getting a ton of comments in the chat window, of course, and I hope you look at those. And I really want to thank you for giving us the incentive to love ourselves, even a recipe for doing that. And that's so wonderful. Thank you so much, Dustin. I knew you would never disappoint. Okay, moving on. Ellen Bass's most recent collection, Indigo, was published by Copper Canyon Press in 2020. Her other poetry books include Like a Beggar, The Human Line, and Mules of Love. Her poems appear frequently in The New Yorker, American Poetry Review, and many other journals. Among her awards are fellowships from the Guggenheim Foundation, the National Endowment for the Arts, and the California Arts Council, the Lambda Literary Award, and get this, 4 Pushcart Prizes. She co-edited the first major anthology of women's poetry, No More Masks, and her nonfiction books include the groundbreaking The Courage to Heal, a guide for women survivors of child sexual abuse, and Free Your Mind, the book for gay, lesbian, and bisexual youth. A Chancellor Emerita of the Academy of American Poets, Bass founded poetry workshops at Salinas Valley State Prison, and the Santa Cruz, California jails. And she teaches in the MFA writing program at Pacific University. Y'all can find Indigo at bookshop.org, and I'm sure her other books as well. You can also find Indigo on my website, Carrie Gunter Seymour Poet, /spoken and heard. So I first actually met Ellen on the pages of the Sun magazine. And like so many, I immediately fell in love with her work. Then during the pandemic, I had the great good honor of meeting Ellen virtually during an online performance of the Hocking Hills Power of Poetry Festival. It's a beloved local series organized by Alan Cohen, who is a bit of a legend here in Southeastern Ohio. And then our paths crossed again later through the Academy of American Poets during my year as a fellow. So I'm just going to say it. Ellen is the poet most of us would all love to be. And it is beyond grand to have her here with us tonight. Welcome, Ellen.
Oh, thank you so much, Carrie, for that very generous introduction and for making this possible. Thank you to the Dairy Barn and Justin. That was such a moving reading. Just beautiful, beautiful, and it's so good to be with you all. I'm just so glad that we all love poetry and have this haven of sanity in in a challenging, to say the least, world. So it's just great to be with you all. And thanks for listening. And I hope we can have some conversation afterward. I'm going to read some poems from my most recent book, Indigo, and a couple thrown in from the one before that, Like a Beggar, and then some newer poems. Susha. I like cutting the cucumber, the knife slicing the darkness into almost transparent moons, each with its own thin rim of night. I like smashing the garlic with the flat of steel and peeling the sticky, papery skin from the clove. Tell me what to do. I'm free of will. I carve the lamb into 1-inch cubes. I don't use a ruler, but I'd be happy to. Give me a tomato bright as a parrot. Give me peaches like burning clouds. I'll pare those globes until dawn. The syrup will linger on my fingers like your scent. Let me escape my own insistence. I am the bee feeding the queen. Show me how you want the tart glazed. I still have opinions, but I don't believe in them. Let me fillet the supple bones from the fish. Let me pit the cherries, husk the corn. You say how much cinnamon to spice the stew. I've made bad decisions, so I'm grateful for this yoke lowered onto my shoulders, potatoes mounded before me. With all that's destroyed, look how the world still yields a golden pear, freckled and floral, a shimmering marvel. It rests in my palm so heavily, perfectly. Somewhere there is hunger, somewhere fear, but here the chopping block is solid, my blade sharp. That that line, I still have opinions, but I don't believe in them. I actually got when way back when Bush was our president, when we used to think that was bad, but he had this great line that was, obviously not what he had really meant to say, but I put it up on my refrigerator for a long time because I thought that it was the one thing that Bush and I had in common, that we had opinions, but we didn't believe in them. This poem is called The Morning After. You stand at the counter, pouring boiling water over the French roast, oily perfume rising in smoke. And when I enter, you don't look up. You're hurrying to pack your lunch, snapping the lids on little plastic boxes while you call your mother to tell her you'll take her to the doctor. I can't see a trace of the little slice of heaven we slipped into last night. A silk kimono, floating satin ponds and copper koi, stars falling to the water. Didn't we shoulder our way through the cleft in the rock of the everyday and tear up the grass in the pasture of pleasure? If the soul isn't a separate vessel we carry from form to form, but more like Aristotle's breath of life, the work of the body that keeps it whole, then last night, darling, our souls were busy. But this morning, it's like you're wearing a bad wig, disguised so I won't recognize you. Or maybe so you won't know yourself as that animal burned down to pure desire. I don't know how you do it. I want to throw myself onto the kitchen tile and bare my throat. I want to slick back my hair and tap dance up the wall. I want to do it all over again. Dive back into that brawl, that raw and radiant free-for-all. But you are scribbling a shopping list because the kids are coming for the weekend, and you're going to make your special crab cakes that have ruined me for all other crab cakes forever. I was thinking about food a lot. Well, I was thinking about what to read, so there's a number of food poems here. This one is Ode to the Pork Chop. As oil blistered in the cast iron pan. Let me start again. Ode to the Pork Chop. As oil blisters in the cast iron pan, my dog does adoring prostrations at my feet, and the pale pink chops with their arc of rib and ribbon of fat lie innocently on the white bone china we bought at Macy's, where my wife asked the sales clerk what kind of bones the dishes were made from, and the woman confessed she had no idea, though surely they were crushed from sorrowful creatures. Everything you do will cause harm, so I start forgiving myself now. And this pig was a happy pig, and his death, though death, was good. I've boiled up his vertebrae, femurs, and fibula, his head and his hocks, and now the stock is cooling, the creamy lard rising to the top like a thick slab of heaven. When these choice cuts hit the skillet, the hiss and spit is a lullaby that soothed Homo sapiens since the discovery of fire and lured the dogs into the circle, shoulders hunched toward the flames. As meat sears and butter bubbles, that sizzling tells us all will be well. The egg will be released from the ovary, the swaddled infant will suck. There will be mayhem and there will be bliss, and stuffed into every cell of our bodies, that deep craving for grease. Here's another food poem. This is called Ode to the First Peach. I wrote this poem because my wife gets frustrated with me that I spend so much time in my cave writing poems and reading poems, and she thinks I should get outside more, which is true. And one day when the peaches were just starting to come into our peach tree, she tried to lure me out, but I kept working, and so she brought this peach to me, and she said, "Here, write about this." So I did. Ode to the First Peach. Only one insect has feasted here. A clear stub of resin plugs the scar, and the hollow where the stem was severed shines with juice, the fur still silvered like a caul. Even in the next minute, the hairs will darken, turn more golden in my palm. Heavier this flesh than you would imagine, like the sudden weight of a newborn. Oh, what a marriage of citron and blush. It could be a planet reflected through a hall of mirrors, or what a swan becomes when a fairy shoots it from the sky at dawn. At the beginning of the world, when the first dense pith was ravished and the stars were not yet lustrous coins fallen from the pockets of night, who could have dreamed this would be carried from the chaos, scent of morning and sugar, bruise and hunger, silent, swollen, clefted life, remnant always remaking itself out of that first flaming brightness.
Ellen, if I might interrupt just for a second, some of our guests are having trouble hearing. Can you turn up your mic at all?
Hi, let me see if I can. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're letting me know. Okay, let me just take a minute and go to the settings. Okay, I'm going to try a different setting. Is this any better?
I think
Or is
even as you get closer to your computer, it's better.
Okay, let me just get much closer. I'm dealing with a hamstring tendon that does not want me to sit. So that's why I'm in my chair that some of you have seen me in quite a lot. But is that better when I'm closer?
It is for me, and it's everybody's saying yes, better. Yeah.
Oh, good. Thank you for telling me. I hate when I find out when it's all over. So it's great that you've interrupted everyone. I really appreciate it. I do want you to hear. Um, that's why we're all doing this together. Well, here's another ode. I really do love writing odes, and this one is to my dear departed dog Zeke that I wrote when he was dying. Ode to Zeke. O breathing drum, O cask of dark waters, O decaying star, my barking heart, my breaking brother, what will seep into the space your body leaves? O huge 18-muscled ears, oscillating ossicles and cochlea, your busy canals now hollow caves of quiet. I have said your fur is black, but you are silvered, rimed with frost. You are the new moon. You are light in the dark house. How long will I see your shadow? O heavy hunk of existence, O great flank I have rested my head upon when I was too weak for human touch. Sleek leading man, you debonair dog, how people on the avenue stopped to swoon. O splaying legs once faster than rabbits, canines slashing flesh, urgent thug, unstoppable thrust, O happy snapping at the wind. What do you remember now that you are a mudslide, glacier melting, cliff collapsing into the sea? I have memorized your milky breath, your ballet leaps and whirligigging, your princely patience as the children dressed you. Soccer Zeke in jersey and shorts, one paw on the ball. Snorkel Zeke with mask and fins. Bar mitzvah Zeke in a yarmulke and my father's silk tallit. Oh, my text of decrepitude, my usher to death, companion of 10,000 years. I'll fry you a fish. I'll sit by your bowl. Eat from my hand. I have nowhere to go. This is a poem that I wrote in the very beginning of the pandemic. And it is called During the Pandemic, I Listened to the July 26th, 1965 Juan Lepin recording of A Love Supreme. The first familiar know them anywhere notes bless me this savage morning. Coltrane's horn racing up and down every alley, in and out of veins and over the faces of lakes and into the heart of stones. And when he repeats a love supreme again and again, it's as though if he says it enough, he can ease that mercy down into me, into the tiny acicular chain, the chemical rush, the spark, and my brain getting it, if even just for this 32 minutes and 48 seconds. My daughter's been sick 7 weeks with the virus. Yesterday, she felt a little bored, she texted, and I grabbed that like a shopping cart. I load it up with hope, make it prayer. When the day's portion of the Torah is recited, someone stands by to correct mistakes. The words must vibrate precisely in the air. So I open my door to the breath of his instrument that refuses nothing, lavishing the grass, gutters and trees, concrete, cars, the gopher pulling down the new lettuces. This generous sound that can mean anything, nothing, whatever you need. And isn't that God? Isn't that it? This shivering, this fall to my knees. Gods do walk among us, but humans are, after all, a broken promise. And yet, these humans seem to be trying to enter what? I can almost hear it, this old planet. Worms passing Earth through their tissue, orchids, corn, mockingbirds throwing themselves into song like there's no tomorrow, which there may not be. Yet still a mountain, still wind, and Coltrane still offering the same 4 notes, like a teacher who is infinitely patient. He's telling me it's worth it to be in a body. He's telling me I'm alive in a beach town in California, and my daughter in a high rise in Vancouver, my girl lying feverish on the couch she's been lying on 49 days and 49 nights, still alive. This next poem, you'll be able to tell by the numbers in it, was written uh, way back, maybe a little more than a year ago. And it's called Pale Blue Vein. The count of the dead in Gaza is rising. Last night, 15,000, 6,000 children. It could be me there with a dead baby. No one decreed I'd be born in a row house in Philadelphia. No one wrote in the book of life that my father would escape the pogroms, carried on his brother's shoulders through the snow from Kiev to the sea. There was a time I thought the pain of the other was not like my pain. Every 5 minutes, a child dies in Gaza. It could be our baby, her eyebrow, its perfect arc, the pale blue vein that sweeps out from the tip of her brow, as though some lesser god gave up on the rest of the world, and in her idleness just added this extra touch of beauty to beauty. My mother died, gosh, I think it's about 15 years ago now. Maybe it's a little bit longer. I lose track, but I just keep writing about her and writing about her. And it makes me feel closer to her. And it also is always a little bit bittersweet because I always wish that I could read poems to her. Seems like that should be possible. Just a little rent in the time space fabric, but um, it's still very satisfying to me to be writing about her. This poem is called As Long as She Likes. On the way to the cemetery, I slept, not in the limousine that carried my mother's coffin, but out cold in a van, the family all talking around me. I was exhausted from her suffering, her pleas, help me, and enough, enough, and trying to get the morphine to stay in the ditch of her gums. How could I not have studied this in advance? The way my mother learned to give shots in nursing school, plunging the needle into an orange, then practicing on the other girls. God only gives you strength for one day at a time. How many times did I hear her say this? Ask yourself, can I make this day? And then she made her last day. On the way back, the driver got lost. As we circled unfamiliar fields and trees dizzy with blossoms, we began to imagine we could buy some land, horses, a lake. Everything seemed possible and hilarious. We were a little hysterical, driving into the luxury of the future. I've never returned to my mother's grave, but I see her every day. Here she is, in short boots, coming back from the beach with a jar of seawater. Each morning she feeds me a spoonful. Minerals. It's something she read in the Pleasantville Press. Here she's wrapping pints in quarts in that same paper, sliding them into brown bags. She's counting out coins into the customers' hands, careful to touch their palms. And here in her bathrobe on a Saturday night, the store just closed. She bites into a hoagie, steak and onions, sips a beer. Tomorrow morning, she can sleep late. There's a law in New Jersey that liquor stores have to close on Sunday. A blessed law that lets my mother sleep and then sit down with a cigarette and black coffee, one strong leg crossed over the other. She can sit there as long as she likes. This poem is called Laundry. Somebody asked me recently if children got in the way of writing poetry, or, gave me less time to write. And I don't think that my children ever did. And now we have grandchildren who we take care of 2 days a week. And um, they're just a never ending source of poetic inspiration. So um, I once had a writer friend who had 4 young children, and she said, I always felt like it was bad form to complain that the children were keeping me from writing. It's not the children. It's never the children that keep me from writing. I know that isn't true for everybody, but I find that the more, in some ways, the more distractions I have, the more I can write. This is called Laundry. The babies dragged the sheets to the kitchen, and now she's stuffing them in the washer, one hand lifting a wad of yellow cotton, the other reaching down for more and more. Breathing heavy, she's feeding vast swaths by the armful, bent halfway into the mouth of the machine, a strip of skin exposed where her shirt's ridden up, an edge of diaper sticking out of her pants. Who can watch a child and not feel fear like static in the background, or a tinnitus you try to ignore? This morning in the Times, I saw the Galaxy Leda 2046648, each spiral arm distinct and bright against the dark ink. Light from a billion years ago, just as the first multicellular life emerged on Earth. What are the not quite 2 years of this intent creature in the sweep of time? Her quadriceps and scapula, the alveoli of her lungs, 27 bones of her hand that evolved from the fin of an ancient fish, and her scribbly hair sticking up from her first ponytail. When she was in her mother's body, the California fires turned the air a smoky topaz, and the sun glowed orange on the kitchen wall. Last month, the floodwaters rose and seeped under the door. Still, there must be time for this, to watch her, hands deep into the doing. She's wedded to the things of this world. When she stands, her sleeve slips down, and she pushes it up like any woman at work. And I'll end with this poem, How to Apologize. I wrote this, again, not only the kids, but my wife is a marvelous muse, and the times when she's most helpful to me in writing poems are the times when she's irritating. And so there was something some time back that we were having a little tension around. And I thought that she should just say, gee, I'm sorry, which she didn't seem to be able to spit out. And I learned fairly early on. We've been together over 40 years, and I think it was around, I would guess around year 15, that I had a kind of Satori experience where she did something irritating to me, and I realized that it would make a really good poem. And after that, anytime I get annoyed, the first thing I think is, what can I do with this? Can I make a poem? So I can't remember what we were arguing about, but that was evidently very important because I was able to run and work on this poem, which I had a lot of fun writing. It's called How to Apologize. Cook a large fish. Choose one with many bones. A skeleton you will need skill to expose. Maybe the flying silver carp that's invading the Great Lakes, tumbling the others into oblivion. If you don't live near a lake, you'll have to travel. Walking is best and shows you mean it. But you could take a train and let yourself be soothed by the rocking on the rails. It's permitted to receive solace for whatever you did or didn't do, pitiful, beautiful, human. When my mother was in the hospital, my daughter and I had to clear out the home she wouldn't return to. Then she recovered and asked, incredulous, but you have thrown out all my shoes. So you'll need a boat. You could rent or buy, but for the sake of repairing the world, build your own. Thin strips of western red cedar are perfect, but don't cut a tree. There'll be a demolished barn or downed trunk if you venture further, and someone will have a mill, and someone will loan you tools. The perfume of sawdust and the curls that fall from your plane will sweeten the hours. Each night, we dream 36 billion dreams. In one night, we could dream back everything lost. So grill the pale flesh, unharness yourself from your weary stories. Then carry the oily, succulent fish to the one you hurt. There is much to fear as a creature caught in time, but this is safe. You need no defense. This is just another way to know you are alive. Thank you.
Oh, Ellen. Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, there's like 1,000 notes in the chat for you. So I hope you'll take a moment and look through those. I've always just felt it's so extraordinary how you take the ordinary and make it so incredible. And I always feel like you're writing about something I should be able to write about, but for some reason it doesn't come out the same way. You make it seem very easy, but I know it
Oh
is.
no. I mean that's not a question, but I'm going to put it make it be a question, and just say, this is like the real. I struggle so much. I write so many poems that fail. I tear my hair out, trying to get a way into a poem I'm trying to write, trying to get a way out. So yeah, when it's all done, anything can look easy when it's all done, but just lest you think it's easy for me and hard for you, any of you who are struggling with your own poems, I just want to disabuse you of that fantasy.
Well, thank you, Ellen. That's so kind of you. And I just want to say to read your work is really a joy, but to actually hear you speak it is pretty extraordinary and wonderful. And it's really a gift. So thank you so much for sharing your work and yourself tonight. I'm going to share just one little short poem with our audience before we get to the Q&A. And it's only because we're coming up on Thanksgiving and the holidays. And I know they're hard for many families anyway. I think this year's going to be even harder because not only is our country pretty severely divided, I think so are our families. And but I know mine is going to try to come together anyway, right? And many of yours will too. And I wanted to share this poem that I had written about a Thanksgiving in my own home many years ago, just as kind of a bolster to you all that you can get through it. It's a very short poem. It's called Every Song a Sigh, and it's in my newest collection, Dirt Songs from Eastover Press. Every Song a Sigh. My family faced each Thanksgiving with something like hope, a residual reenactment we clung to. All of it handily snookered by my sister's demons. There was turkey. All the smells you smell at your table were served at ours. Sweet corn, candied yams, buttery biscuits, accusations. We'd bow our heads for the blessing, Daddy reminding us we were built to love. Mama would shout, "Amen." My sister would snort, make fun of Jesus. Mama cried. Outside, the sky stretched and yawned. I imagined myself a songbird, dips and swirls, a clear rippled coolness of breeze. So there are places you can disappear to if you need to. So get out in nature. It will help you deal with whatever must come. But it's so important that we get with our families and our communities. And I'm not mean to be preaching, but we all need each other now. So thank you for listening to me. And I know now you'd like to get back to Dustin and Ellen, and I'm going to invite them both to turn their cameras and their mics on so that we can have a little bit of a Q&A. I'm going to try to keep track of the chat if you all want to ask a question. Oops, my chat's not staying up. Here we go. Oh my gosh, 34 new messages. Okay. Let's see. Well, if y'all don't have a question yet, I do. So I'm going to ask my question. And if you all have some questions coming from that, that would be great. Oh, here's one. I'm going to let you all go first. Okay. For both, but inspired by Dustin's reading, what does the collaboration process work look like when you're working on one particular poem? So in other words, when you collaborate with someone, how does that work?
Yeah, I'll say I'd also like to give credit to Maureen Seaton. We lost Maureen last year, and she was a friend and idol of mine, and I always wanted to collaborate with her. And I didn't have the courage to ask because I didn't think I was worthy enough. And when she passed, that was part of my wake-up call that should have been like, silly, Dustin, why didn't you ask me? And so now I've just been asking anyone and everyone that I love writing. But it really comes down to what are you trying to accomplish and agreeing on your rules for the project. So like Diamond and I always, when we are approaching, and I'm using Diamond, who's here tonight, hey girl, because we've collaborated the most, is we pick our topic and then how we're going to approach it. Am I doing 3 lines? Then you do 3 lines. The rule part is the best to keep your friendship with your collaborator and respect the rules that you come up together, and then figuring out what works best. So Diamond and I have realized we work best sitting beside each other, even though we're both in a Google document. And then I lean over and I say something, and she leans over and she says something. Other people, there's Beth, my mentor Beth, we've written a lot of contour villanelles. We do well writing back and forth on email, but it's just figuring out what works for that dynamic and adhering to the rules.
Any thoughts, Ellen?
I've never collaborated on a poem, so it's fascinating to me just to hear what you're saying, Dustin.
Oh, maybe Ellen, we need to write a contoured villanelle together. That's my new thing I've been collaborating on.
I've never written a villanelle. Sounds challenging and interesting.
It's fun when you do it with others.
I loved hearing yours.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, they're great. And you could really, really feel how the form worked so beautifully with the content, with the form and the meaning worked so beautifully together in every one of them.
Thank you.
Okay, then I don't see another question just yet. So I'm going to ask mine, and I'm just going to ask you both the same question. Excuse me. And I've been asking this the entire year because it's a question that Appalachians always ask each other. You know, a lot of you folks will meet each other and you'll say, "Oh, hi, you know, what do you do for a living?" Or where do you, where are you living? Or what kind of food do you like? The first question we ask each other is, "Tell me about your people." So Ellen, if you want to go first, since Dustin's done a little speaking, then we could let him go after. So tell us about your people.
So what, tell me a little bit, I'm not from Ohio.
Right. Right.
So what does that do?
Or Appalachia. Well, I've
Tell me a
I've
little bit
had
about that.
people I've had people tell me that they're that are teachers, that they're a lot of their students are their people. I've had people who really tell me about their people, like 9, 10 generations of their people. Or I've had people who tell me about the family they have built that they have now where they are so incredibly happy. So I don't want to guide
Well, I love
you
all of
at
that.
all.
That's wonderful. Well, maybe I'll start with my teachers. I've had, they're for sure my people, and I've had three amazing mentors in my life. The first is Florence Howell, who was my teacher way back in college when I was 18 and she was 36, and we remained close until she died in 2020. And Florence is not as for all that Florence has done, a lot of people don't recognize her name, but it was co-founder of the Feminist Press, which is still running and is the oldest women's press in the world. And she's also considered the mother of women's studies, that there was not a women's studies before there was Florence. And she taught me everything that I have used in all the years since in my teaching. She taught me the basics of how to be with people in a way that listens and um, where she let us know that um, what what we had to say to her was as important to her as what she had to say to us. And I mean, in when I was her student in college, I thought that was ridiculous at first. It was like, you're the teacher. She would like ask us what we wanted to read and what we wanted to study, and I was like, how should I know? You're like the teacher. I'm a kid. Um, but this deep respect for each person, and a kind of open listening and not asking questions that you already know the answer to, all that kind of stuff was what I learned from her way, way, way back when I was just a teenager. And Florence then asked me to co-edit with her No More Masks, which was the first major anthology of women's poetry that came out in 1973. And I was a baby then, and she allowed me to be an equal partner in that. I wasn't just the gopher. She allowed me to make all the decisions right along her side, and she's very, very dear to me throughout my life, and I still can hardly stand that she isn't still in her apartment on the Upper West Side, and that I'm not going to still be able to just keep going out and being with her there. So she was my first great teacher. My second was Anne Sexton, who I was incredibly fortunate to have as my teacher at Boston University when I was getting an MA in creative writing. And as many of you probably know, was very flamboyant and dramatic in her readings and performances. But as a teacher, she was not like that at all. She was very thoughtful, very respectful. It was not all about her, it was all about her students. And I don't think she thought a great deal of my poetry, which was realistic. Um, I was not somebody who showed a lot of early promise. I was a very, 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 very late bloomer. But she was encouraging. And at that time, my other poetry teachers really didn't know what to do with my not very good poems, and didn't know what to do with a young woman's voice at that time, in the late 60s. Um, and so they just essentially cross things out. It was just delete, 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 so that my not very good poems had whatever tiny bit of life they had in them, just, hammered out of them, so that they were little dried up, desiccated little things. And Anne said, no, write more, expand. And just that, even though she didn't say anything particularly good about my poems, that advice to just keep going and stretch out and not write these, tiny little things, that was enough. It was, sometimes you all know this from your own lives, whether it's a teacher or whether you have a really, really difficult family and there's an aunt or a neighbor or somebody who just gives you a little bit of a lifeline, and that's enough to keep you going. And then my third teacher was Dorianne Lux, the brilliant Dorianne Lux, who really taught me everything that I know about the craft. And I will be forever grateful to her. So those are my teacher people. My family is, I'll just say a little bit because I'm kind of going on and on and on here. But I live with my wife, and we've been together for 40 some years. And as we always say, the first 20 are the hardest. If you can get past those, you might have it made. And so we are definitely happier together than we've ever been. And that's really wonderful. We have two grown children, our daughter who lives in Vancouver, British Columbia, and our son who lives just 20 minutes away and has two little children who, as I mentioned, we take care of and bring. If any of you are hoping to become grandparents someday and you wonder if all the hype, if it lives up to the hype, yeah, it does. It's like really as good as they tell you it is. And I never really got that until having grandchildren, but they just bring so much joy, and it's so fascinating to watch an animal become a human animal. The the process of, you can't really get in their brain, but you can kind of peek a little bit. And it's, scientifically speaking, it's a fascinating process that I just kind of keep watching. Jane Hirschfield just mentioned to me that I might want to read, and I just started reading it. There's a book called The Scientist in the Crib, about how children experiment and learn, and it's a little outdated. If you read it, you'll notice all the places it's outdated, but it's still very, very interesting book. So and then I feel very fortunate to have a community of friends who are family. And we when I got together with my wife, I still am a hermit, really. I'm not agoraphobic, but I'm whatever is the neighbor of that. I just really like to be home, even though I travel for work. And once I get out somewhere, I'm so happy to be there and to meet the people that I meet and get to, learn from them and hear them. And but I sort of hate to leave home. But I was really a hermit back then, and she came from a very different upbringing and is more tribal. And so there was an open door policy, which I found very, very difficult until slowly, slowly, slowly she wore me down. And I think that, in the world we live in now, it's not that common to have a life where friends don't make dates necessarily or call you first, but just come by. And if you're busy, you can say so. But a lot of people come in and out of our house. And we had a friend house sitting from out of town last summer, and she was a little shocked at how many people just came to the door and said things like, "I need to borrow the truck keys. They're in a basket on the stereo. Could you hand them to me?" Or, I think my mail is here. Could I come in and get it? So I feel very, very fortunate that my wife, drew me out into a place where I don't really have to leave home and can just have a lot of people come by. So if you're in Santa Cruz, maybe we could take a walk. Oh, you're muted, Carrie.
I'm
And I'm
just
gonna,
talking away here and I'm unmuted. Thank you, Ellen. Dustin, well, what I did say was thank you, Ellen. It's always so nice to, find out these things about people that you admire. So it's very good of you to let us come into your brain like that and find out all these little details. That's so wonderful. And now we're going to do it to Dustin.
Well, my people is definitely my partner, Chris, who's also in the chat tonight, who 9 years, hope I got that right. I'll hear about it when I walk out this office if I got it wrong. 9 years, who's just unwavering in his support and is the first partner I've ever had in my life that says, "Babe, are you okay?" And I look at him and he goes, "You haven't read me a poem that you've written lately." And like, is that not love? So I'm very lucky to have him. But on a broader note, I would say I think my community is anybody that feels like they haven't belonged, like that has been in that space of feeling like they don't have other people. We are a community together, and there is a support there if you reach out and find those people. And I think a lot of us are writers. Like, I think a lot of the people, I think if you surveyed, you're going to get so many people that as a writer would say, yeah, that was me, at least at some point. And I think it probably stops when they found more of us and they realize that actually I do have a community. I do fit in.
Well, that was just lovely, Dustin. Oh my gosh, thank you. And I hope I'm in your community. I really hope I am. I've just really enjoyed knowing you and
You are
doing
not going anywhere. I won't let you.
Okay, that's a deal. I love doing some projects with you and with your other writer partner, Julie, um, who we haven't brought up her name, but Julie Blomecki. Am I saying that right?
Well, Becky, yep.
Yeah, and she's a wonderful person too that you introduced me to. So I'm just really grateful for that. Um, so Ben has, oh, I shouldn't tell who. Somebody has asked a question. And this person wants to know, what was the last book of poetry you read that you couldn't put down until you finished it? And I know that puts you on the spot because I know we all have the tendency to want to support our friends and others. But every now and then we do come upon that one book that you're just like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to read this whole thing. I'm not gonna be able to set this down. Either one of you can go first because I know this is a hard one.
I was just working on a paper. So one of the books I kept going back to that I couldn't in that context, because I've been reading just to write a paper on the Villanelle and talking about the Volta and evolution of the form, and is Tim Siebel's Voodoo Libretto. I just kept finding myself wanting to go back to that book over and over. And finally, the person I was having a look at my paper was like, maybe we could not focus on Tim so much. But it's because I love the book so much. And that's just what I've been doing, is reading a lot of villanelles to write a paper though.
oh, I love Tim's poetry so much too. Oh, it's great to bring him into the
His
room.
blues villanelles, right? They're just mind blowing.
He's amazing. He's really amazing. And I love how he can just take a poem and go and go and go. It's great. Well, I can answer this one too. This is coming out in January, and I had the good fortune to get to read it in manuscript, and it's Padraig Otuma's Kitchen Hymns that's coming out from Copper Canyon Press in January. And some of you, I'm sure, know him from Poetry Unbound and his wonderful, wonderful discussions about poems. And it really was like, the kind of, popcorn, or, I mean, they're very, a lot of it's very serious, but it was that feeling of like where you just read one and then you have to read the next one and then you have to read the next one. And I just read it straight on through, which I rarely do with a book of poetry. I usually read a little and let it digest and read a little more, but I had to just keep going.
Sounds like two absolutely wonderful folks for everyone to look into. And Patrick's new book will be out the first of the year, did you say, Ellen?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's exciting news. And Tim Siebel's is already available. So those of you who don't know his work can certainly find that probably in the library and a great bit of it online as well. I always like to mention that because sometimes, I don't know about you all, but my budget by this time of the year is getting pretty slim for buying new books because I always buy so many and I have stacks and stacks. And I have realized that once I'm very old, I will have time to read these books when I can sit down and really appreciate them. But it's always fun to get them and at least have a cursory read through. But it sounds like the two of you found two books that you certainly couldn't put down, which is pretty wonderful. And I know a lot of people. Oh, I'm sorry, Ellen.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention about, but I mean, you are already, the gold standard of buying books. But I do want to make an exhortation that for those of you who are a little bit lagging in your book buying, to step it up. I was talking to my oldest best friend, and she was saying something about putting one of my poems online, and I was just getting organized to send out a mailing reminding people to buy books for the holidays. And she said, well, yeah, I put your poem on Facebook. And I said, well, yeah, but when's the last time you bought a poetry book? And she said, well, I have your books. I said, yeah, but I gave them to you. When's the last time, not necessarily my poems, when's the last time you bought any poetry book? And she said, well, you can take them out from the library. I said, okay, well, when's the last time you took one out from the library? And, of course, I just demolished her at that point but, if you buy a coffee out ever, if I mean, if you're like super strapped for money, you are completely exempt. But, if you buy things like a cappuccino now and then, everybody who loves poetry should be buying a poetry book at least once a month. And
Mhm.
if you really can't afford it, you can get, order it, have your library look and see what they already have, because if they have it, they've already bought it. But getting your library to buy the book is as good as you buying it. It still gets sold. And
Mhm.
they make incredible holiday gifts. And, of course, Dustin and I would love you to buy ours, but you don't have to buy ours. Just buy books, and buying poetry for other people who don't know poetry the way you do is really, really a gift, because people can't find the poetry books they want themselves. There's
Mhm.
too many books out there and too many that aren't going to be what they want. If you go into a bookstore and you want a novel, and you look around and you read the backs of some novels, and you kind of read what people have said about them, and say you bought 3 novels, the chances that you'd really like one are pretty high. But if you went and did that with poetry without knowing the poems, the chances that you like one are very low, because there's so much poetry and it's not to everybody's taste. But you can be curators of poetry, and you can pick a book that you think somebody would like, and there's nothing that you can buy, I don't think, or not much, for under $20 that somebody would get as much meaning out of as a book of poetry. So that is my, coming toward the holiday spiel. And, don't, if we do take a walk on West Cliff, don't let me embarrass you. You'll be able to tell me the books that you bought in the last month.
I want to
Yeah.
add to what Ellen said, because I think a queer person as a writer Our gifts are great to give to that homophobe in your life during June, which is Pride Month, and October, which is LGBT History Month. Give queer books to people that are homophobes.
I
We love that too.
I love that. I love that. And I do love the idea of trying to do some reading so that you are informed. If you're going to buy a book for another person, you really do kind of need to know the poetry so that you can give them something they might really be able to love and appreciate. Because I think sometimes people shy away from poetry because they have approached poetry and they haven't found their poet or poets. And so they're very turned off by it. And, we're trying to turn that around, not reinforce that. So do some research if you're going to buy for others. That's always a good thing. Tonight, you've heard two amazing poets and myself that have books available. So keep that in mind. Can find all of those on my website, or I've got them in the chat tonight. I think that's about it for the questions, except that everybody wants to know how to do a villanelle, Dustin. So you may end up getting a lot of people reaching out on social media to you to talk to them about villanelle. We don't have time tonight, but I think everybody certainly enjoyed your villanelle. And Ellen, oh my gosh, both of you, thank you so much. This has just been like a bucket list night to have the two of you here. So open and honest, and just such a beautiful thing to have come upon us before we face these holiday times. So thank you both so very much. I always hate to have to say goodbye, but we do have to, and I want to thank all of you who've come out this evening. We had a totally full house. It was just very amazing. I want to thank everyone who watched later on the Dairy Barn YouTube page and on my social media pages, as well as on my website, CarrieGunterSeymourPoet.com/spoken and heard. Thanks to the Dairy Barn Arts Center and the Ohio Arts Council. Again, please buy our guests' books. And you got to get into your mind, put it on your calendar to join me next March as we start again on the 2025 season to hear the extraordinary voices of Appalachia's Charles Dodd White and Puerto Rico's Dorcia Smith Silva. Until then, be well, friends. Happy holidays and Happy New Year.